Great to have you back on board again, gang. How are we doing so far? You enjoying yourselves? We're enjoying ourselves, I know. Absolutely. That. Yeah, we are. Today is a really critical one. Today is about our path of education, an education concept, our learning pathway. And there are 4 different segments that we can fall into. So I want you to really look at yourself and see which of these segments do I really find myself falling into
Absolutely.
here. Josh?
It might be different for every concept. So some concepts I might be on the bottom stage of learning, other concepts I might be further up, but it's a really good model or framework for you to assess where am I in learning and integrating this particular model. So the first stage when we're learning anything, of course, the bottom floor, the ground floor, is unconscious incompetence. Where unconscious meaning I don't know, and incompetence meaning I can't do it. So I don't know that I can't do it. I don't know that I don't know. And I've written in the workbook, I don't yet know that I don't yet know. And the yet's really important because this pathway is all about growth. And this whole course has been geared because we know you can grow and we want to give you some tools to help you grow. So it's not that you don't know, it's that you don't yet know that you don't yet know. It's really important to understand that this is where we're at before we have the aha moment. You know those moments where we're like, oh, man, if I had known that, I would have been doing things differently. But I was, moving along in life thinking I knew the best way to do it and I didn't. Oh, man, I wish I had known that. That's classic unconscious incompetence. I don't know that I don't know.
And on the flip side of that, Josh, too, isn't there those people that can be really those annoying ones, that are unconscious incompetence, but yet they think they know everything. And it's like, have you ever worked with those sort of people? Yeah. They think they know, and they're like, oh man, you don't have.
It can be a real challenge.
It can be a challenge working with those people. But I like what you've said there, Josh. It's about that I don't yet know that I don't yet know. So that gives us that huge potential now to move into that stage of growth.
It's a really dangerous place to be in as well. You can do a lot of harm in that, where you're going along thinking you know things that you don't know. It can be unsafe. People who don't really understand the safety ramifications of what they're doing, and they're doing things unsafely. There's a great video doing the rounds on Facebook of a blindfolded person about to do a trust fall, and everyone's lined up behind them ready to catch him, and they say, okay, ready, 3, 2, 1, fall, but he falls forward instead of backwards.
Oh, no.
A classic case of the man who was running that exercise was in unconscious incompetence. He did not know that he did not know how to run that activity safely. So he thought he was running the activity safely, and someone got hurt.
Yeah, I know. I see it actually even in my own industry, in the health industry, working on people and so forth. People that think they know it, and yet there's definitely that case of being able to screen your clients properly and to know what techniques and what treatment skills are needed to actually treat that person in a safe and effective way. So
Absolutely.
Really great. But
this is where our misbeliefs are as well, right? Yeah. So going back to the self-concept model, if wherever those misbeliefs are in our life, the parts of our self-concept that are outside of our potential, we're probably sitting in unconscious incompetence in those areas, or else we'd be moving them towards our potential. So let me give you something to do right now. Let's pause for a moment. We're about to hit the pause button. And I want you to write down, so far in the program, what have you learnt or heard Lauren speak about or heard myself speak about that you can identify, you know what, I've been in unconscious incompetence in that area. I didn't know that, and I didn't know it, so I've actually been doing some harm, either harm to myself or harm to others. Just write something down there right now. We'll be back in a moment. Ready? Pause.
The second step in our learning journey is the conscious incompetent. And that means that we now know and we understand what we actually don't know.
Yeah.
And that's a really important part to be. When we reach that point, I think we really are in a positive place. We actually now understand what we don't know, or that we don't know it yet. And let's not forget the yet, because we're on that growth journey.
Well, it's after the aha moment, isn't it? So I've had the aha moment.
Yeah.
I now know that I don't know. I can't do it yet, but at least I know that I don't know it. And that's a really important stage of learning something.
And it can be quite a motivative point too, doesn't it? Because you're just like, actually, I know I don't know it. I actually want to become better at that.
Absolutely.
You realise that your mind becomes open. It's almost that point of humility, isn't it?
It is.
You know, where you really allow yourself to be teachable. And that's a really great place to be.
Absolutely. So there's probably some things that drew you to this course where you were already in some conscious incompetence, where you came to this program going, yeah, there's some stuff I don't know. I know I don't know it. I need to know it, so I'm going to enroll in this course. So just spend a quick minute now jotting down a couple of things that you know you don't yet know. And of course, this moves us to the third stage of learning, conscious competence. This is a great place to be in.
It's a good place to be. There's no
I know that I know when I remember to know. This is a really interesting one. It's like, so long as I'm thinking about it, so long as I'm concentrating, I can do it well. I remember moving from conscious incompetence to conscious competence when I first started driving my car, Lauren. I remember it distinctly. I couldn't change gears properly. I couldn't operate the clutch properly, and then all of a sudden I could. But all it took was the radio to be turned on. I couldn't drive and change gears and indicate and do everything at the same time and not stall the car if the radio was on. As soon as the radio was on, I couldn't concentrate because my mind, if it slipped focusing about the car and started focusing about the radio station, I suddenly became incompetent.
It's an interesting stage, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Shall we go into the third stage, Josh?
Yeah, maybe have a think about some things in your life that you can do so long as you're really focused. So long as I'm focused on this thing, I can do it and I can do it well. As soon as I've had a bad day, as soon as something hasn't gone according to plan, I slip back into unhealthy defaults. Maybe write down something first.
Yeah, it's interesting, Josh, when we get from that conscious competence, one of the strategies that I find really useful in that situation is to slow down.
Yeah.
It's like when I get my guitar, and I'm practicing, I know I can play it if I concentrate. I've got to make sure that my fingers are being placed in the right spot on the strings in order to play it. But once you go through that slowly and it establishes this really clear pathway, this pattern within your mind, within your brain, all of a sudden we go then from this conscious competence to a place where we become unconscious competent. We don't have to think about it so much. It's almost subconscious, really, in a sense, isn't it? Now I play the guitar and I'm not even having to think about where my fingers are going. They just unconsciously land on exactly the right spot.
Yeah, I now know, and I know well, even when I don't know. It's like, even when I'm not thinking about it, I can do it really well. Driving is my example because, again, if now these days, 17 years later, I've been driving for 17, 18 years, and of course over that period of time I can now drive even without thinking. I'll take a phone call, maybe I'll be on my way to the shops to do some grocery shopping, and my mum will call and I'll start having a big conversation with my mum, and when I get off the phone to my mum, I'm parked back at my house. I'm like, how did that happen? And I think to myself, well, obviously I just got caught up in the conversation and stopped concentrating, but I still obeyed the speed limit. I didn't run any stop signs. There's no blood on my tyres, so I'm assuming I didn't run over anyone. So I still drove competently, but I drove unconsciously. Of course, the problem with this stage of learning is it's really hard to teach someone else how to do something that you can do unconsciously. It's really difficult. If someone was to say to me, well, which streets did you take? which route did you take to get home? And can you remember the exact speed? Well, no, I can't. I wasn't being mindful. I wasn't present and in the moment. I was off with the fairies. I was talking to my mum. So when you're doing something unconsciously, competently, although you can do it in your sleep and it's become a new default, and that's fantastic. It's a pretty high stage of learning. It's not the highest, and I haven't written down the highest stage of this because it goes beyond the original theory. But my idea of the next stage would be mindful competence. So something that I can now do unconsciously, but in the moment I'm still mindful. So it's not unconscious competence, it's mindful competence. This is the guru stage where, you know what, I can do this so well in the moment, being mindful of what I'm doing, which means I can pass this on to others.
That's a great place to be, because how often have we maybe even found people that are really intellectual, but yet not necessarily the best at conveying or passing on that knowledge.
Absolutely.
They're unconscious competence, there's no
absolutely.
question. But they just have difficulty conveying that, getting that message across. And so that mindful competence is really good. I find that with me. I do a lot of training of therapists now, and I'm at a stage now after 32,000 people. We're talking, how long does it take to become an expert? They say like 10,000 hours. Well, I've done like 24,000 hours. So kind of, what does that make you?
Yeah.
I don't know what it makes you. But
Mindfully competent, maybe?
Mindfully confident. But what happens is you become so subconsciously good at or competent at doing something that when you go to teach someone, you just have to stop and unpack it a bit and think, hang on, what do I actually do here to do that? And that's when you start to become very mindful about where you are, or how to be mindfully competent at doing something and teaching something.
So maybe have a think about what are some healthy things that you do and do well, and maybe sometimes you do them without even trying to do them. They're just part of who you are now. It's really important that we don't just acknowledge the growth areas in our life, the pain points, the parts in our emotional health that we're finding hard, but it's also important that we acknowledge our strengths as well, Lauren.
Definitely.
So spend a moment now just writing down any unconscious, competent aspects to your emotional health. What do you do so well that you can do it in your sleep? Just take a minute to write that down. So moving forward, it would be really good if as you learn new concepts and as we teach you new models, maybe have a think about each concept. Where am I on the stage of learning? Am I unconsciously incompetent where, wow, I really didn't know that I didn't do that, so I was unconsciously incompetent? Or maybe, no, I'm consciously incompetent and I know I can't do that, that's why I'm here. Or I'm consciously competent, I can do that so long as I'm thinking about it and concentrating about it, but as soon as I've had a bad day at work, I slip. Or maybe, no, I do that quite well. I can do that in my sleep. Have a think about that moving forward. You might also want to go backwards over the models and concepts we've already looked at and just think, whereabouts am I?
Yeah, evaluate where you're up to with all of those things. And we've covered a lot of territory already. And the more we go and integrate all of these concepts together, you will need to go back and just review in order to really get the most out of this, so that we can move from this unconscious incompetence stage right through to where we become a little bit more subconscious and more of an unconscious competent person.
Absolutely.
In each of those emotional health stages in our life.
So the next model that we're going to be talking about links into this stage of learning concept, and we're going to be talking about the brain and how the brain works when we're trying to move from conscious incompetence. I know I can't do this, but I want to become consciously competent. What do I need to do? We're going to look at the brain and what you need to do in the next video. I hope you're with us.